Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
Friday and all of today's guests, including Thomas Drance, standing by. Brought to you by the Bayside Oceanfront Resort. Looking for a midweek escape close to home? BC residents save 15% on weekday stays at the Bayside in Parksville. Relax by the ocean, enjoy great dining, and unwind with island hospitality. Great golf nearby as well, Rick. Book now at BaysideResortParksville.com. Thomas Drance joins us now from The Athletic, as he usually does on a Friday. Thomas, thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
Gentlemen, I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Very
Lovely,
well.
lovely.
You worked for the Florida Panthers for a significant amount of time. We see what they've been up to, not just last night, but over the last several years. Rick says they got better when you left.
Oh,
Is that true?
yeah, 100%. 100%. 150%.
Not immediately. I wouldn't say that my departure was the key driver of this.
I think
exactly.
it was. I talked to some people in Florida.
I would refer to the 2019-20 season then. Rick, go check that out. Go see how much the Panthers improved in my first year away from the club. Look, Bill Zito's done a phenomenal job. He came in 2 years after I left. So that I think has been the key change for that organization. Look, a PR guy changed. They certainly upgraded in that area, but I don't know that I was the driver. No, you know what? I actually think one thing that's under discussed when we look at and talk about the Panthers, and there's been a lot of bold moves that they've made that have hit. I think Bill Zito, especially, for example, I think moving on from Andrew Burnett after they broke through and won the President's Trophy, but sort of fell short in the playoffs. They still won a round. Like, they won the President's Trophy and won a round in Burnett's sort of first year, and they still thought they could do better and hired Paul Maurice, and that was a widely panned decision by Panthers management that's obviously paid massive dividends. Sam Reinhart wasn't Sam Reinhart when they dealt him. They dealt the NHL's third leading scorer plus another top pair quality defenseman for Matthew Tkachuk. That wasn't a tap in to improve that team necessarily. But obviously we've seen the return. Sam Bennett for 2 seconds, massive steal. But for me, honestly, gentlemen, I think the roots of this Panthers glow up have to be traced to the fall of 2020, which was you remember the fall of 2020 was when free agency day was on October 13th. Mm-hmm. And one edge that the Panthers had that other teams didn't was, their owner, Vinny Viola. It was in a business that actually benefited from some of the market insecurity that sort of hit during the pandemic. And where every other team, including the Canucks, was sort of tightening belt straps, the Panthers were out there signing Anthony Duclair to a 1 year or 2 year deal, at $1 million, and Carter Verhaeghe on a cheap flyer deal, and Alexander Wenberg on a cheap flyer deal, and other teams were sending money in, money out to even make waiver claims. You remember the Canucks claimed that next season, the Canucks claimed Travis Boyd and Jimmy Vesey, but first they had to trade Jordy Ben at the deadline, right? And money in, money out for everyone else. The Panthers, they were just like, Noah Juulsen on waivers, sure. Gustav Forsling on waivers, sure. They played with volume, and they had resources that just weren't available to other teams, plus the cap space to utilize those resources, partly as a result of the Vincent Trocheck trade. So, that was a huge swerve. They were able to zag when everyone else zigged, budget-wise, during the pandemic, and I think that really set them up to have a huge volume of talent. I mean, not only can you draw a direct line from some of those moves to guys on the roster like Evan Rodriguez and Gustav Forsling and Carter Verhaeghe, all key contributors, but also, I just think it sort of deepened a lineup that had elite talent at the top in Barkov and Ekblad and company, but sort of lacked that depth continuity, which Bill Zito's obviously done a tremendous job filling out and then upgrading over the years. So for me anyway, I think that's the under-discussed edge that the Panthers were able to sort of ride to what's become, a 5 years of relative dominance in this league.
Hey, Thomas, pro and scouting meetings for the Canucks. A lot of seeds are going to be planted about what happens in the next 5-6 weeks. All this talk about getting a top six center. Here's the thing, Thomas. there's a ton of teams looking for the same thing.
Yeah.
How are they going to get a top 2 center? It's going to be expensive, and teams that have it, they not necessarily want to give Vancouver one. Like, how are they going to go about this?
Not easily, but they're going to have to be extraordinarily creative. They're going to have to be dexterous on the trade market. I think whether it's in free agency or on the trade market, they're going to have to make a bet. They're probably going to have to swing the bat on a guy that the day he's acquired, we don't necessarily look at him as a second line center, which again, coming back to the Sam Bennett analogy, he wasn't looked at as a no doubt hard-nosed, playoff-performing second-line center the day that the Florida Panthers acquired him, but that's what he's become. You can go back through recent Cup winners and find a litany of players that match this description. William Karlsson was a cast-off from the Columbus Blue Jackets when he blew up for the Vegas Golden Knights, and obviously they won a Cup in 2023. So, hockey history is littered with these types of players. They're not easy to find. It's not a predictable sort of bucket to be shopping in, pond to be fishing in, as it were. But that's sort of where the Canucks are likely to find themselves. I think they're going to have to swing the bat. They're going to have to take a chance. They're going to have to lean on their pro scouts to find some value. And that's going to be the path forward here. Now, I will say, as much as we've been obsessed with the idea of a top 2-line center, and we're taking our marching orders and discussing that directly from Jim Rutherford and the Canucks themselves. As much as that's a clear and pressing need for this team, I also think, and you can go read my latest at The Athletic comparing the Canucks roster to those of the final 4 teams in the conference final right now. I would argue to you, gentlemen, that the biggest need is not necessarily a second-line center, although it's a tremendous one. It's just an elite forward. Like, they need an elite forward. They are an elite forward short when you measure them up or stack up what they've got against Dallas and Carolina and Florida and Edmonton. And those are the teams you're going through. As much as we like to talk about parity and on, 11 of the last 16 conference final berths are represented over the last 4 years by these 4 teams, right? Like, they're all here again. They've all been here since 2023. Dallas has been in 3 consecutive, Edmonton 3 of 4, Florida Panthers 3 of the last 3. Like, it's really hard to break into this tier of teams. As much as we think that anything can happen in the playoffs, like, the best teams are here again and again and again. And to sort of get to that level, to catch those teams, it's going to require a lot. And I think the number one thing this team needs is a game-breaking, elite forward. Like, another forward who can be what Pettersson can be at his best. So in addition to the Pettersson bounce back, I think you're talking about another elite forward, and then you're talking about another first-line caliber forward. Those are sort of the 3 key legs of this parlay, as it were, if the Canucks are going to get back to contending credibly next season. A lot of work cut out for Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin. They don't necessarily have the cap space or the assets to go out and land those players, so it's going to require a Herculean effort from Canucks brass and their pro scouting staff over the course of the summer.
But what would you cough up? The first-round pick, a Lekaramaki, a Willander, a Hronek, a Garland, a Demko. Is it going to take something like that to get this done?
Yeah, or a combination thereof, right?
Yeah.
I think without question, to be totally honest with you, Rick. So to sort of go over the list, I know the idea of trading Hronek has been a popular one locally, which honestly for me, watching from afar on vacation, I'll take that as a local talking point as opposed to us just doing round 14 on will Elias Pettersson bounce back or will Quinn Hughes stay beyond this season, right? I'm glad we have something else, some more fodder to talk about. Here's the thing about Filip Hronek. Like, again, comparing the Canucks to the teams that are still in the final here, or in the conference final here, all of these teams have multiple top pair caliber defensemen, like 3. And 4 top 4 caliber defensemen at least. Yeah. Like, you trade Filip Hronek, you're down another top pair caliber defenseman. You're going to need to fill that slot. Like, as much as we like what we've seen from Victor Mancini in the Calder Cup playoffs, as high as we might be on Tom Willander, you can't expect those guys to step into the lineup and be top pair caliber defensemen the way Filip Hronek will be next season. So really, you're just blowing a hole in your lineup elsewhere. I'd add that you probably still need a top 4 caliber defender. Maybe Elias Pettersson can be that guy. Maybe Mancini can be that guy. Maybe Willander can be that guy, but that needs to happen. for this team to match up with the best of the best in the NHL. I know that a lot of people locally are looking at this Canucks defense core and thinking that's a surplus. That's a surplus. They're set there. They can use that to acquire forward help. And they may have to consider going down that road. But this defense isn't at such a point that, it's not in need of further investment and sort of thoughtful care as this club looks to reimagine itself for the post-Rick Tocchet era. This defense needs at least to return a Derek Forbort type or upgrade on him, I think, if they're going to go into next season without even considering subtracting pieces, with their sort of blue line being the strength that I think we're talking about locally. I do think we need to acknowledge that. As for Demko, Garland, the guys who are extension eligible, I think if you're struggling to get their autograph on an extension, if those contract talks end up finding their wheels spinning, then yeah, I think those are valuable players who may, the club may have to take a long look at considering whether they pivot and utilize those guys to sort of improve or get younger or get players that have term on their deals, just given sort of the precarious spot in their team building cycle that this team finds itself at. And then as for the young guys, that first rounder, I'm sure that's burning a hole in the Canucks pocket. Like, I'm sure it is. I'd be a little bit more surprised if they were to consider moving Tom Willander. I think Elias Pettersson, the young defenseman, I think he's off the table. I think I think he's as close to untouchable as it gets. I would assume that applies to Tom Willander as well, although I don't know it specifically the way I do with Elias Pettersson. And so that sort of leaves Victor Mancini, acquired in leg one of the JT Miller trade, the two-part JT Miller trade. He's had a tremendous run in the Calder Cup playoffs. If his value spikes, could the club consider that? We'll see. I certainly know that he's turned some heads internally with his traits and his composure over the course of this AHL playoff run.
The key to the Panthers' success is not that you left, it's that you were there, Thomas.
Right, yes.
And you left your mark in that organization.
I doubt that, too. I would say I was there for a good time, and I wish I'd gotten to work some of this run. I mean, this is incredible. Very happy for all the folks down there. What an absolute juggernaut they've become.
Outstanding. Thomas, thanks for this. Next week, next Friday.
Sounds good. Cheers, boys.